I wish I could tell you an easy way to get through bereavement, but there isn't one. It's just hard. It's just hard.
Welcome to the Brand New Me podcast. I'm Frances.
And I'm Pam.
And we are two women passionate about helping others thrive in life, not just survive. In each episode, we're going to find creative ways to offer hope for your future through our own life experiences. So join us every week as we learn together that we really can be a brand new me. Welcome to episode number 16. We keep having these amazing opportunities to interview people from different walks of life who have been through different kinds of things, and today is no different. But today came about really because of relationship. I was having lunch with a friend and a person who plans events at an organization, and we were meeting halfway. We met in Lancaster. She lives in Maryland, and she was telling me about a widows conference that they hold at their organization, and I said, "Oh, you ought to have Pam come and speak." And I told him Pam's story, and she said, "Yeah, it sounds interesting." And so we exchanged information, and they got a hold of Pam, and through that, Pam met the woman who plans these widows conferences or sponsors them at Sandy Cove in Northeast Maryland. And Pam is going to be speaking at a widows conference there in Sandy Cove in Maryland. And she has been getting to know and developing a relationship with an author and speaker and the woman who had the passion and the vision to start this widows conference. And so I'm going to let Pam lead this interview. We did it over the computer, so the audio sounds a little different than normal, but I think you'll still get the essence and the heart of what it was like for one woman to lose her husband, and she has some really good advice for women.
We are so happy today to have Gayle Roper here. Gayle is an award-winning author of more than 50 books, and she has been a Christy finalist 3 times. And she enjoys speaking at women's events across the nation, and she loves sharing the powerful truths of the scripture. And she does it with humor and practicality, which I love that, don't you, Frances?
I do.
So she lives in southeastern Pennsylvania, and she enjoys doing all kinds of things, reading, gardening, and of course she's writing books all the time. So we are going to talk today about widowhood. And sometimes it's not something that we want to talk about, but Gayle has experienced this, and she's going to share with us what it's like to become a widow after living with a spouse for many years.
Well, I met Chuck in Ocean City, New Jersey, when I was working there during my college summers. And at the time, I was going with someone else, so he dated my roommate. It was a year and a half, I guess, before we started to date. Neither of us ever dated anybody else after that. We were married for 47 years, and we have 2 boys, Chip and Jeff. We lived in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, which was Chuck's hometown, and he worked in the steel industry, which he thoroughly enjoyed. I always thought that steel has got to be one of the less interesting things in the world. But every time I went over a bridge or was in a building, I was glad for people like Chuck who thought steel was fascinating. We were, like I said, married for 47 years. Probably the biggest event in our lives, besides our children, was that we helped plant a church and watch it grow from 17 people to a couple of thousand. And so that was a wonderful experience.
That's a big thing to happen in your life, an event that God used you for. That's awesome.
It was great. It really was. Totally unexpected. The growth size of it anyway. Chuck became ill about 3.5 years before he died. He had cancer. It was not one of the terribly, terribly painful cancers that some people go through. And for that, I'm glad, because he didn't suffer as much as many people do. But he was sick, and our lives for those 3.5 years revolved around chemo schedules and, doctor visits and all that kind of stuff. But during that time, his attitude And dependence on the Lord was an amazing thing to watch. And I hope when I become ill and die, which eventually will happen because it happens to all of us, that I have as much grace as he did. While the emotion of it eases, the sorrow of it doesn't go away. Sometimes, even now, I miss Chuck every bit as much as I did when he first died, but it's not with that every moment intensity that happens at the beginning of bereavement. The sad fact is that there are about 800,000 new widows a year in the United States alone. So that this is a very common experience, and unfortunately, most women experience it. The guys, for whatever reason, seem to call it a day before the women do. And so many, many women are widowed. At this point, I live at a retirement community, and the single men are few and far between, but there are single women all over the place here. All of us have had to learn to live a totally different life. And you can do that. It takes thought and time and prayer.
Gayle, I'd love for you to read an excerpt from your book, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd be happy to. For years, I took membership in the couples club for granted. But I am no longer a couple. I am a single. One, not two. I no longer belong. So who am I now that there's only one plate at the table, one glass, one knife, fork, and spoon? There's only one pillow with a head dent. There's only one toothbrush in the holder. The seat that's never left up anymore. I can still write Mrs. in front of my name, but I'm no longer in a marriage relationship. You need two people for a marriage. There's only me.
So tell us how long have you been a widow now, and how are you dealing with that kind of thinking and feeling now as you've had more time to process his death and loss?
It's been a little over 7 years since Chuck died. And I've learned to carve out my own life instead of our life together. I've decided that there are three things that a woman needs to have in place to be a successful widow. It'd be nice if it was in place ahead of time, but if not, she's got to work on it after the fact. And the first thing is she needs something that's her own, something that she does by herself without her husband. It can be a hobby, it can be a ministry, it can be a job, but something that's hers, so that when she goes there, every time she turns around, she does not expect to see her husband. For me, it was my writing. Chuck did not write, except, technical stuff at work. And so my writing has been my thing that is still there. It's secure for me to do without expecting Chuck there. Same for going to writers' conferences and things of that nature. The second thing I think a woman needs is friends and family around her. If your family is close to you, that's wonderful, because they will help you and care for you and look out for you. But oftentimes family, even families that love each other, are spread geographically. And consequently, they can't be there. They may be there in thought, but they can't be there in practical helps. So you need to build your friendships, particularly with women friends. I thought, even as a married woman, that you need to have women friends because husbands can't fill every hole. There's things that only women can do and only women think in a certain way. So you need women friends no matter where you are, but you especially need them after you're widowed. And I've been able to develop a group of women friends. Some are widows, some have never married, some are divorced, but it's a neat group of women friends. Go out to dinner together, we can go to the movies together, and we can go on trips together. It's just a group of people that I can trust and feel comfortable with. Then the third thing I think every woman needs is a good relationship with the Lord. Time with him, prayer, and time with him in his word, and time with him in worship at her church. And then in the dark of the night when there's nobody, the Lord is there.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask you, now I became a widow and I was 55 years old. I was older. And for some reason, I couldn't picture myself being single the rest of my life. And I really desired to be remarried again. Some women say, yes, I would love to be married again. And some just say, no, I've found my love. And I never want to be married again. What was your thought on this, Gayle?
I would not mind being remarried. I don't anticipate it happening. I think the biggest danger of wanting to be remarried is that you jump into a relationship because you don't like being alone. And many women don't like being alone. Neither do a lot of guys who were widowers. They marry too quickly too. But you have to learn to be alone by yourself before you can get into another relationship. But my husband and I at one point helped with divorce care at our church. And the thing that scared me about these young women especially was that they wanted to marry again quickly. Life was hard. Caring for their children alone was hard. The finances of it was hard. And it scared me that they would jump too fast. And that's my main concern for a widow, particularly a young widow, is that she jumped too fast. Because it's hard to be alone. It's emotionally hard. If you've got kids, it's very, very difficult to not only care for your own emotions, but care for their emotions, and they're hurt because they've lost their father. It's too easy to jump too fast. I don't think there's anything wrong with remarriage, and I think for some people it works very well. But it's usually blended families when there's a remarriage, and that's always something to think about really, really carefully. So I don't expect it for me. Part of it's my age. You know, most of the guys my age are little old men. I'm not particularly anxious to take on a little old guy. You know, you got to train them again, and there's not that much time to train them left.
That's true. You know, I was thinking that too when I was dating a little bit. I thought every time I met somebody, I thought, oh my goodness, they're so old. And then they ended up being my age.
I know. At one point, I decided to try internet dating, and so I signed up for eHarmony. All the pictures of these guys are these little old men with white hair and, you know, millions of grandchildren and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, he's not moving away from where his family is, and I'm not moving away from where my family is. This is absolutely hopeless. So I just gave it up. But it comes down to that. Can you be happy by yourself? And I think it's very important that you learn to be happy by yourself. Maybe the Lord will give you somebody else, but maybe not.
What advice would you have for women who have just recently lost their husband, and maybe they didn't work at having a hobby of their own, and they find themselves now suddenly widowed? What advice might you have for them?
First off, they know that it's going to hurt. And there's no way around that. It's going to hurt a lot. And so you just have to accept that and realize that you're not the only person. Everybody feels the same way. And the other thing, I guess, one of the other things anyway, is give it time. The pain will ease. It won't go away, but it will ease. And life will again seem not quite so bleak. But be patient with it. Don't make any quick moves. They always say you should wait at least a year before you do something like sell your house or you know, make any kind of a major move of any kind before you do something financially different from what you've been doing. You know, take time to be able to think, because when you're first widowed, there is that fog that settles down over you mentally, and thinking becomes very difficult. They don't tell you about that. They tell you don't sell your house for a year and all these other practical things. But very few people tell you that you work in a fog for quite some time. And you have to make all these choices and sign all these papers immediately for legal reasons. And you're in this fog, and it's very difficult. You know, whatever you can put off. Take your time. I wish I could tell you an easy way to get through bereavement, but there isn't one. It's just hard. It's just hard.
I know one mistake I made. I had a little poodle, and she passed away not too long after Rick passed away. And I thought, you know, I was really feeling lonely. So I went a whole year without a pet, and it was kind of heavenly. And then I was starting to feel really lonely. So I decided to get this puppy, which I would probably I'd probably deter people from doing that, but he's been a wonderful pet. But it was rough because I was not only grieving myself, and now I was actually taking care of this little animal who needed a lot of care and a lot of attention. And it's probably something I would discourage people from doing. And it's like you say, don't do the change for a little while, because I took that on and I was kind of regretting that I took that on.
That's a good idea, Pam, to take it easy before you get a pet or take on another major responsibility. But one thing you can do is make small plans so that you have something to look forward to. I found just knowing if I had something to do next weekend was a big help to me, because there was something to look forward to. I was going to be out of the house. I was going to be out with other people. I was going to do something socially. So first off, just going out for dinner with friends, couples or singles, it doesn't matter. And this is a little aside, but the greatest gift I was given at this particular point in my life was when people would listen to me talk about Chuck. They would just let me talk about him. And they didn't try to fix it because it's unfixable. But they would let me tell Chuck stories. They wouldn't try and change the subject. They would tell Chuck stories. And that was one of the greatest gifts I was given by people. And we don't think about that lots of times. But most people want to talk about the person they've lost because they feel the loss so keenly. But back to the short plans, I had to initiate some of these plans. I had to call up people and say, would you like to go to dinner? I had to call up people and say, would you like to go to the movies? If you sit around waiting for people to call you, nobody may call. They got their own lives. So we often have to be the ones to make these plans. And then I got a great gift. About 6 months after Chuck died, I got a contact from a missionary friend who was in France, and asked if I would come to France for 2 weeks to be a teacher at a camp he held every summer for missionary kids and expat kids. And so I had that to look forward to. I could go to France for 2 weeks. I'd never been to France. That was just a bigger plan to look forward to, and to know that life was going to continue and something interesting was going to happen after all.
Yeah. I think, I don't know how you felt, but I felt that the worst time of day was between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. because I guess that's the time when you're cooking dinner and it's kind of life in the house. Even if it's just two of you, it's still you're getting ready for something. And I struggled with that time. I didn't know what to do with myself because at first I didn't want to cook. I was eating cereal. And then it's just time that I just didn't know what to do with. How did you feel about that time in your life?
That is a hard time. I think a harder time, well, I don't know if I should say harder, but another hard time for me was when it was time to go to bed and you get into an empty bed. And that's a hard thing. You reach out your hand and there's nothing there. And that was hard. I think what I miss, even to this day, is having a body next to me. I was watching something on TV, and the couple were snuggling in bed. Nothing sexy or anything like that. But she had her head on his shoulder, and her arm across his waist, and he had his arm around her back, holding her close. And I thought, I miss something like that. There's nobody that hugs me or holds me close. That's a big hole. And there were 2 times of the day when that would be most likely to happen. And one was when Chuck came home from work, and I'd often go in and sit on the bed while he changed clothes and, got himself comfortable. Then sometimes we'd just lie down and talk and put my head on his shoulder and he'd hold me close. And then the same thing at night, often before, you turn away and actually go to sleep. Just that cuddle, that hug, that physical touch, that's a big hole. That's a very big hole. And I think that's one reason why some women hurry into a relationship. They miss that physical touch, not the sex particularly, although they may miss that too, but the physical touch, that general, somebody hugs me. And there's something about a guy hug that's a lot different from when your girlfriends give you a hug.
Yeah. How has losing your husband, has that changed your writing at all? You've written 50 books. Obviously, you had that established long before he died. But has it impacted your writing at all?
It probably has in ways that I'm not aware of. The biggest thing is, of course, Widow's Journey. I didn't write anything for over a year after Chuck died. Some people would sit down and immediately begin to journal about it and write all about it and stuff, but I didn't write anything for over a year. I was sitting on vacation on the dock by a lake. All of a sudden, I started having these short little blurbs come into my mind. And so I started writing them down. And I thought, now what do I do with these things? And they became the blog, A Widow's Journey. And I did that for 2 years. You know, as I thought about it and prayed about it, I decided I wanted to cover those first 2 years of the grieving process, because oftentimes year 2 is worse than year 1. And as I'm getting near the end of year 2, I thought, well, it would be nice if this were in a concrete form that somebody could give to somebody. You know, you could give to a friend who's bereaved or something. So I started contacting some publishing people I knew. And so it became the book, A Widow's Journey. Then, you know, as I'm thinking about that, I got thinking about it'd be nice if these women could actually talk to each other. So it became the Widow's Journey Conference that we have every year, the first weekend in March at Sandy Cove Conference Center in Maryland. That's been a really neat experience. We're coming up on our 4th year. And we've had well over 100 women every year who come together and listen to speakers from up front, but also are in small groups so they can each share their own story. And we make sure they laugh. We do some line dancing and show some funny movies and stuff like that. But it's a wonderful time to be with people who actually understand what you're going through. Because I remember when my mom was widowed, I felt really sorry for her and I really missed my dad, but I didn't understand until it's your experience. And, you know, we know that academically, but that's really, really true in life. So these women that come together, all ages, some new widows, last year was 2 weeks a widow, and another woman was 20 years a widow. And so it's been a wonderful thing to talk. And for the newly bereaved, it gives them hope that life goes on. And for the older women, it gives them a chance to share what they've learned with these younger women, newer women.
Tell us where they can find how to go to a widow's conference.
sandycove.org, and that'll bring you up to the main page. And then they have an events page, and under women, it says widows. And you can see what's going on at the Widows Conference this year.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for writing your book, all your books, actually, but finding a way to use your pain and share it with other people, especially through this conference that you've mentioned, and for sharing your story. We appreciate having you here and being part of the podcast.
No, it's my pleasure, believe me. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Gayle.
Like to fly, I'm letting